Star Wars, Young Jedi Knights, Jedi Under Siege, Chapter 12. The thick branches of the damp and shadowy jungle closed around him, pressing in. It reminded Zeke of the murky lower levels of Coruscant. It felt almost like home. He and his troops of dark Jedi had fallen from the skies, buoyed by repulsor packs. After coming down to rest on the upper branches, they'd worked their way down to ground level and spread out to surround the fleeing Jedi trainees. Master Skywalker had brainwashed into supporting his rebel philosophies. Zeke knew little about politics. He understood only his friends and who his supporters were, and who had betrayed him. Like Jason, Jaina, and especially Jaina, he thought she was his close friend, his companion. Only later, after Brackus had explained it, did Zeke understand that Jaina really thought of him. How easily she dismissed his Jedi potential and the possibility that he might be an equal to her and her high-born twin brother. But Zeke did have the potential, and he had proved it. In spite of this, he hoped Jason and Jaina would not fight him, because then he would have to demonstrate his power and his loyalty to the Second Imperium. He remembered his first test against Timothy Kai's prize student Villas, and Villas had paid with his life. In the high upper branches of a tree overhead, one dark Jedi fighter had become tangled. Zeke watched as the bright arc of the lightsaber blades slashed boughs out of the way, clearing a path for the fire to descend to the lower levels. Overhead, a wing of TIE fighters roared across the skies, firing into the forest. The dark Jedi spread out, looking for potential victims on their own. Zeke gathered 3 of the nearest fighters to his side, and they marched along, crashing through the underbrush. They reached the edge of the wide river, whose brown-green currents lapped quietly through the jungle, stirring overhead fronds. Further downstream, closer to the tall Massassi temple ruins, he saw Timothy Kai's hovering battle platform. Zeke stood beside his dark Jedi's companions on the riverbank. The other fighters exchanged glances and pointed skyward. Zeke nodded, knowing what they wished to do. Yes, he said, let us conjure a storm, a great wind to knock the jungle flat and send these Jedi cowards scurrying. He looked up into the clear blue skies and reached deep within his heart, finding a shadow of anger, the pain he had felt in his life. He knew how to use the anger as a tool, a weapon. Zeke gathered the winds. Beside him, he felt the other dark side warriors doing the same, drawing thunderheads until lumpy black clouds rolled in from the horizon. The wind picked up and grew colder, charged with static electricity. Zeke's scarlet-lined cape rippled around him. Stray strands of dark hair whipped around his face as the wind snatched them free of his ponytail. Flashing bolts of lightning skittered from one thunderhead to another. The rumble of noise drowned out even the sound of TIE fighters crisscrossing overhead. Zeke smiled. Yes, a storm was coming, a victorious storm. But as the clouds continued to swell, releasing a powerful weather energy, he heard sounds of repeated laser fire and glanced into the sky, where another battle was taking place. A one-sided dogfight. A smoking ship careened overhead, pursued by one lone TIE fighter that shot its energy bolts again and again, mercilessly pummeling its prey. Astonished, Zeke recognized the clunky patchwork form of the lightning rod, the cargo ship of his old friend Peckham, the man with whom he had lived for many years. Peckham! They had been close companions, good friends, despite how little they had in common. Too late, he remembered the old spacer earned credits by making occasional supply runs to Jedi Skywalker's academy. Could it be his old friend had been here in the Jungle Moon when his morning's attack began? His heart sank, and a wretched dismay filled his stomach. His concentration on the storm faltered. In the backlash, winds whipped the trees closer to him, blowing branches as the dark Jedi struggled to regain control of the gusting squall. No, Peckham, Zeke said, looking up as he watched the TIE fighter blasting the hapless lightning rod. A small explosion flared on its hull, and Zeke knew that the battered ship had just lost its shields. The lightning rod was going down, and there was nothing he could do about it. He heard shouts of surprise next to him as the dark Jedi Knights completely lost control of the gathering storm. The winds continued to snap branches and uproot saplings, then gradually dissipated as the dark side warrior stopped manipulating the weather. Their attention had been drawn to a young Jedi trainee they discovered in the underbrush. Someone who either had been creeping up on them or simply hiding from Zeke's advance. The boy scrambled out of the woods, spiky pale hair blowing around his flushed face. His clothes and robes were so ridiculously garish, bright purple, golds and greens and reds, that they hurt Zeke's eyes. How could this young man have thought to hide while dressed like that? The boy appeared frightened but determined. He thrust his lower lip out and stood with his hands on his hips, his rainbow-colored robes ripping around him in the last vestiges of the angry wind. Very well. You give me no choice, the boy said, cleared his throat. I am Raynar, Jedi Knight, in training. You either surrender now or force me to attack you. Two of Zeke's companions laughed in wholehearted amusement, ignited their lightsabers, and stalked toward the trapped young man. Raynar stepped backward until he bumped against the rough trunk of a tree. He squeezed his eyes shut, struggling to concentrate. He held his breath until his face turned bright red, then purplish. Zeke felt a slight invisible push as the boy attempted to use the Force to drive him back. The two lightsaber-bearing Dark Jedi seemed not even to notice. Zeke, though, found he had no stomach for outright slaughter. The boy seemed proud and brash, but there was something about him, an innocence. Thinking quickly, before the two companions could drive in and make short work of Raynar, Zeke reached out with the Force, grabbed the boy in his bright robes, and yanked him off his feet. With a flick of his mind, he hurled Raynar over the heads of the companion, tossing him out into the river. Raynar yowled as he flew, then plunged belly first into the thin, muddy waters. The two Dark Jedi whirled, looking angrily at Zeke. Out in the water, Raynar splashed in the shallows, completely soaked in mud, his robes covered with river slime. It is a greater victory to utterly humiliate your enemy than simply kill him, Zeke said. We have humiliated this Jedi in a way he will never forget. The Dark Warriors next to him chuckled at the observation, and Zeke knew he had diffused their anger. For the moment, at least. Then he looked longingly into the sky, hoping to spot any trace of the lightning rod, but he saw only a dissipating cloud of smoke overhead. He wished he could find some way to help his friend. Would he be forced to count the loss of Peckham as part of the cost of victory? The wounded ship had passed out of sight to where the battle would reach its foregone conclusion. He was certain he would never see the lightning rod or Peckham again.